slobber of ink here that's, QR code, and it takes you right to the every song we have played in 2025 is on that playlist. Kate updates that every Saturday night. So if you want to get an eyeball of what we're going to be singing tomorrow on Saturday night, it will be on there. But you got to remember all of them that we've done so far. So.
Are they in order?
What's that? The newest are at the tops. There you go. There you go. So we try to get this thing back hanging where it's supposed to be. All right, so that's Sean's latest and greatest newest. So sorry, Lindsay. I did better this week than you did last week, apparently, because I picked the music this week. But last week was pretty good. Lindsay picked all the music for last week, the hymn and everything. This week, Tammy picked the hymn, and I said, yeah, I can work that in with a message. We'll make that work. Trust and obey. Because, again, Lindsay asked me yesterday, what are you talking about tomorrow? And I'm like, that. I said, actually, I think we're going to build off last week, which was building off Ron Goldberg from a few weeks prior. For such a time as this. And we can look all throughout Scripture, and so many things were for such a time as this. How, going back to where it all started with Esther in this conversation, for such a time as this. And then I texted Kate, like Joseph, for such a time as this. Something, I'm like, that's a terrible. No. So she calls me and she goes, that's terrible. I'm like, yeah, I was just thinking that. So 10 minutes later, we came up with, what's your dash? Well, but as I messed up, if you look on here, or if you're on Spotify or Apple Music, dash is what we're going to be singing at the end. What's your dash? We're not going to be hitting all these chapters today. Just saying. But we are going to be hitting some of them. My original plan, and I've talked about this many times, Steve and I have talked about this quite a few times. This is where I want to go with the message. I feel like the Lord is leading me to go here with the message. And actually, Kate and I talked about it when I gave her, and she's like, looking at, really? I'm like, yeah, we're going to hit a little spot, and a little spot, and a little spot, and a little spot. We're just going to hit the highlights of the life of Joseph and what he did. So I go out in my office, the Bible's out, tablet out, got my coffee, got my water, everything. And I've said it many times. I've never heard the audible voice of God. But then there's that Holy Spirit, dude. It's the same exact thing. And he's saying, you are not going to shortcut what I put in Genesis. You're not going to pull pieces and parts. You are going to talk about Joseph and who he was properly. Okay. You could have made it more clear than that. That feeling of you're not going to do this. Okay. So we're going to do a lot of reading today. We are going to skip one chapter in this, and that would be chapter 38, because that, while it goes with the narrative and homework, go read chapter 38 when you go home. While it goes with the narrative, it makes sense in the narrative and all that, it's not necessarily the narrative of Joseph. It's kind of like, I do a lot of messages, and we do it constantly, whether it's Bible study or Sunday school or whatever. We get off on tangents, you may have noticed. Chapter 38 is kind of a tangent in the dialogue of who is Joseph. I like the song Awaken Me for this. And I talk about it a lot. Let's not bash someone unless we know where they were at in the situation. How many times have we talked about how bad the Pharisees were, or how bad this one was, or how bad that one was? Until we put ourselves in their situation, we cannot judge them, because we need to have those circumstances laid on us before we make those decisions. So, as we start reading in this, there's two sides to the story. And then there's like a aha moment that I had never really put together that irritated me about the text. I never really put it together till last night, and I said Sunday school downstairs, it kind of still irritates me the way this went down. So, chapter 37, we're starting right at the beginning. Like I said, we're going to skip 38. We'll hit a lot of real estate here. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. So here's where we're at. We're in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. So start just stopping here. We're not going to make a lot of stops in here. He's a little brat snitch. Let's just put it where it is. Joseph, at 17 years old, is a snitch. He's out there with the older brothers. Anybody's got a little younger sibling or whatever, at some point, Mommy, Daddy, he's touching me. At 17 years old, Joseph is a little brat. He's a snitch. Well, they did that out in the field. Dad, he went home and he tattled on his older brothers. And instead of working it out with his brothers, I'm going to go home and I'm going to tell on you. That's Joseph at this point. Wake up the sleeper. That's where Joseph's spiritually asleep at this point. He's a little brat. Instead of taking it up with his brothers, he brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel is Jacob, so that's an interchangeable name. His given name was Jacob. God changed his name to Israel. So when we see Israel, same person as Jacob. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was a son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. There's a second reason as well, is because of his mom. He loved Rachel more than his other three wives, and this was the son of Rachel, the wife that he really did want. Leah he didn't really want. He was hosed by his father-in-law, and he found out that he married the wrong girl. And then, John's looking at it. Back up 2 chapters, you'll see it. But this is how it went down. You know, he worked for 7 years for the hand of Rachel. And then Laban says, well, yeah, but you can't marry her first. She's the younger sister. You got to marry the older sister first. So you got Leah. If you work for me another 7 years, you can have Rachel. And then along the way, just to kind of fill in the blanks, Rachel couldn't have kids, and Leah wasn't having any more kids. Hey, take my servant. Hey, you take my... We'll have all kinds of wives and kids. And Rachel's like... Ugh. Rachel finally had a kid, Joseph. That's who he really wanted to be with, to start with. So this Joseph is very special in his eyes because of Rachel. So that's kind of a backstory. So he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Siblings, with any jealousy going on. Have we ever seen this among siblings? Have we ever not seen it among siblings? Now we're seeing it amongst what we have named right here. At this, we've got 12 brothers and 1 sister that are named. So 13 kids that we know of. Are we going to have any sibling rivalries, especially when we have a parent who greatly loves one more than the rest? Brandy's looking at me like, I got a house full of kids, and wow, I can see it. They never argue, do they? Get all them girls together, never an argument. Not once. It's human nature. They saw Dad loved him more than them, and they couldn't even speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and this, shut up, Joseph. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. It's a good thing to tell your brothers they hate you. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us, or are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. His father, really? You've had these two dreams. Does it say you really pondered them, really stayed on them, dwelled on them, anything like that? No. It doesn't say that. But Jacob or Israel, he kept the saying in mind. He thought about it. He's like, I wonder if there is something to this. Because you're my favorite son. I wonder if you are going to be something. Remember, if we go back a few generations, Abraham and Isaac, both of them were given huge plans from God. Your family will be awesome. You'll be huge. More than the sand on the seashore, or if you can count the dust or the stars in the sky, that is going to be your family. You will have royalty within your family. Is Jacob going, is he going to be the first one? Is he going to be the first one that is going to be, wow, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he's been given this information from God through a couple of generations, and he just kept the saying in mind. I'm just going to remember this. I'm going to remember this. I'm going to put this in the back of my mind. It's a weird dream, but two of them kind of the same. Interesting. So now we go a little further with 12. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them. And he said to him, Here I am. So he said to him, Now go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields, and a man asked him, What are you seeking? I'm seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said, They have gone away, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. So without going farther into the narrative here, Israel says, Go spy on your brothers and come back and tattle on them if they're doing anything wrong. He's 17 years old. He has 10 brothers that are older than him. What age are they? I don't know. They're older. Do we not think they are capable, growing up as shepherds, to go out and shepherd the flock? They should be plenty capable. They're up into their 20s, maybe even to 30. I don't know. When you got 4 different mothers, we don't think about them as basically a year apart because they could be overlapping in age and 2 of them could be the same age. Who knows? But what we do know is he of them that are older than him. Do they have any servants with them? I don't know. Doesn't say. Are they more than capable of doing the job? Yeah. Was he sent out by his dad just to, hey, you guys okay? You need anything? No. They're more than capable of, if they need something, getting whatever they need. He was sent out to spy and to tattle on his older brothers. So with that in mind, being sent out, I'm seeking my brothers. Tell me, where'd they go? Oh, they went to Dothan. All right, I'm going to go to Dothan. So verse 18, they saw him from afar. Can't miss this robe of many colors. And before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say, A fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. They're a little anger about these dreams. The little brat is coming again. Let's just kill him, throw him in the pit. We'll say that some strong animal got him. Let's get rid of Joel. Little Joel, we don't want him around anymore. Let's get rid of him. Siblings, you ever thought of that? Older siblings hurt younger siblings? She's got a weird look on her face, and Shannon's back there going, there are times, I was the younger sibling, and my older sibling is not here to go, I want to get rid of him. It happens. It definitely happens. Do we literally conspire with other siblings to kill that younger one? Well, that might be taking it a bit far.
Hope not.
Yeah. But because of this dream, because he's a rotten snitch, because Dad loves him more than us, let's get rid of this kid. Let's get rid of him. But when Reuben, now he's the oldest, so as the oldest, yeah, you get the birthright, you get all the good stuff, right? You also get the lion's share of the responsibility of your younger siblings as well. So with the good comes the difficult. Yeah, I'm the oldest, cool. I get the birthright, I get a bigger share of the inheritance, I get all that. But you get a lot of extra responsibility as well. So 21, when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. Don't kill the little brat. Come on, he's a brat. Leave him alone. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father. He had ulterior motives. Well, be nice to the kid. Let's take him back to Dad, restore him to Dad, and say, Dad, you're going to get your kid killed if you keep asking him to snitch. I'm bringing him back to you alive, but stop. Just take him back. Just put him in the pit. Just relax, everyone. Relax. We want to kill him. We know that. I probably do too, Reuben's thinking, but we cannot. Let's restore him to Dad. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. The Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone, and where shall I go? Again, he's the responsible one here. Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood, and they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, we have found, please identify whether it is your son's robe or not. Didn't say anything about our brother's robe. No, is it your son's robe? And he identified it and said, it is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. I'd always just thought, reading as the Midianites, you know, and strangely enough, that's the Midianites are going to come up a little later in wars when they went to war against Israel. And the Midianites were called one other word in here, the Ishmaelites. Where do the Ishmaelites come from? Think on that one for a second. Who are the Ishmaelites and where do they come from? Their family. Abraham had 2 sons. What was his first son's name? Ishmael. This is only 2 generations removed. These are your cousins. We'll sell them to our cousins. Shouldn't the Ishmaelites, somewhere along the way, go, that's your brother, that's our cousin. What no. Why? Because God himself said that they would be against everybody, that the Ishmaelites were going to have a tough existence. I will bless you. You will be your nation as well. They are your modern day, what we would call Middle Easterners. Non-Jewish, we would call them. I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're Muslim, but many are. That's where that whole group comes from. That is why they are constantly at war with Israel. Why? Because they're siblings. Sibling rivalry thousands of years later. The brothers are still at war with each other. So not only are they selling their brother off to slavery, they're selling them to family. This is 2 branches of the family. They're just rotten people. Okay, he's a snitch. He's a no good punk. He's a dreamer that just, I had a dream and you're going to bow down to me. As an older sibling, your thoughts are? You'll pop that kid on the end of the nose. Again, put ourselves in their position of where they're at. Yourself in Joseph's position, he's probably thinking, man, I probably should have shut up. Probably should have kept that dream to myself. Probably shouldn't have snitched on it. Probably shouldn't be here to start with. But here we are, and I'm in a pit, and I don't have my pre-coat anymore. Crap. Now I'm being sold off. Other than being a brat, has he really done anything wrong? It's just being a bratty kid. He hasn't really necessarily done anything wrong up to this point. He's just being a teenage boy. Guys, we've been there. He's just being a teenage boy and being dumb at times like teenage boys can do. So with that, he's in this caravan going to Egypt. There's something really cool about this in this bad situation. And we can look at a verse that everybody wants to just cherry pick out for. It's a feel-good verse. It makes me feel really good. Romans 8:28. All things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called, the part that they want to leave off, and called according to his purposes. We're going to see, like we looked at, the very short narrative of what Esther did. This all went down in about a week's time. Real short time. This is not going to be short. This is going to be hundreds of years of that promise found, written by Paul to the people of Rome, of all things will work together for good. If you love the Lord, we'll change the wording there, and if you're called according to his purpose. This little brat is called according to his purpose. We can think about sometimes how it just seems like everything just falls together for somebody and this just works out somehow. But we never look at the backstory of what they had to put in to get to the point of where they look at a performer or whatever, and all of a sudden they just rose up on the charts. Yeah, but they were singing these small clubs for the last 20 years to get to that point. A preacher just arrives on the scene. But what has he gone through to get to that point? We don't necessarily look at the backstory. If we go to the end of this, we can see he's the number 2 man and he saves Egypt. I don't think it's a spoiler alert. I'm hoping we've all read this before. But what did he go through to get there? Well, he's a little punk. Then now lost his coat and is in a pit and is now sold off to his cousins. I'm sure they didn't get together for Thanksgiving and Christmas and all this other times we get together as families, because it didn't happen yet. But other than that, I don't believe that the Hebrews and the Ishmaelites spent a lot of time together because of that sibling rivalry and because of what God said in the prophecy that God gave to Abraham. So again, we're going to skip 38. We're going to go to chapter. Start off at verse 1. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and that's the key. Back to that Romans 8, called according to his purpose. The Lord was with Joseph. He did not do any of this alone. He was righteous with God at this point. The Lord was with him because he was used according to God's purpose, and he was willing to do it. And he became a successful man. And he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer of his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field, so he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you were his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" As he spoke, and as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. As soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house." Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home, and she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house." As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, "This is the way your servant has treated me," his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. The Lord was with him. He was living righteously. We might think, if the Lord was with Joseph, then why was Potiphar's wife chasing him around? Why was Potiphar's wife trying to seduce him? Because God had a further goal. God had this planned out. It's step by step by step. God had this planned out. He orchestrated all of it. But why did he have to deal with that? Why did he have to be sold? Why did he have to deal with Potiphar's wife? Why did he have to end up in prison? In my opinion, wake up, sleeper. You're nothing but a punk kid, and I've got plans for you, and you, my man, need to grow up a little bit. You've had it very easy in life. You need to know what it's like to not have everything. You need to know what it's like to lose. You need to know what it's like to be in other people's shoes. And if I bless you in every way, you're not going to be able to do the work I have for you. And I got great work for you. So we think about Potiphar's wife and how she was trying to seduce him day after day after day. And finally told a lie about him. Put yourself in Potiphar's shoes. If this slave kid that you have bought and you have put him in charge of everything is now trying to your wife, because that's the story. If he's trying to seduce your wife, are you just going to have your anger kindled and throw him in jail? You own him. You have the right to do anything you want. You can kill him on the spot, and you don't. Why? Why? Guys, anyone who's married here, somebody comes in, tries, good-looking dude, says right here, he's a good-looking dude. He's trying to seduce your wife. Your wife tells you about it. What are you going to do about it? You going to stand up for your wife a little bit here, or you're just going to have your anger kindled and put him in jail? Potiphar knew his wife. I think Potiphar knew she's a liar. I think Potiphar knew who Joseph was good enough that he trusted Joseph and had to save face by putting him in jail. Because he can't go against his wife. That's just wrong. I think Potiphar knew who his wife was. And she wasn't to be trusted. Joseph, who he was, and he was to be trusted. Because God was with him. Everything Joseph did went right. Everything for Potiphar got so much better with Joseph there. Why would Joseph go and ruin this? Doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. And I believe that Potiphar was like, I believe Joseph. I don't believe my wife. I'm going to throw him in jail to save face, because this isn't going to go good with my servants and my family. I'm just going to put him in jail. You got the right, the authority, and really the cause to kill him. And they would have back then, but he didn't. Because God is with him. And I believe God was with Potiphar at this point too. He trusted God in this man of God, even though he started out as a punk. He is now something in Psalm 1. So we go a little farther. He's in jail. Again, put yourself in his shoes. He's been thrown in the pit. He's been sold off. He's been accused of trying to rape the guy's wife. He's a slave, and now he's in jail. Man, everything is going right for Joseph in this point. I'm working for the Lord, and now this is not working. This is not good. But hey, now I'm in jail. I'm in charge of everybody again. It's kind of cool, right? Still in jail, though. Chapter 40. Sometime after this, so this isn't just a short amount of time, sometime, not next week, sometime after this, cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. Again, not just a week. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each of his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in the master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." This is the interpretation of the 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. Now remember, we're not in like a pit type prison here. He's in a house at this point. He's under house arrest. He's trusted good enough. He's not in what we would consider the dungeon prisons like a lot were. He was in a house prison. He had ascended a little bit, and he's like, "I gave you the interpretation. The interpretation's good, but when in 3 days, when you go back to be with Pharaoh and you put the cup in his hand and all that, could you please just say something to him? Can you get me out of here? Can you get me out of this house? For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head." And Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the hand of the chief baker among the servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him." I gave you the interpretation. I'm running the jail. I said you're going to have a good day in 3 days. I said you're going to have a bad day in 3 days. Could you please? I really don't want to be here. I've done nothing wrong. I shouldn't be in jail. I shouldn't be here. But here we are. I'm here. Can you say something to Pharaoh? Because you're with Pharaoh. Do you mind saying something on my behalf? Tell him I shouldn't be here. Can you get me out of here? Yeah, sure. He gets back to his position and forgot it. Again, this is God's doing. God needed him there longer because of God's timing. Remember, God's timing is not our timing. We may want this to go quickly. Doesn't mean it's going to. This whole situation as it started, it's about 700 years before it ends. What gets started by Dad's favoritism ends basically in the book of Joshua. we go that far before we get to the culmination of what started right here. We're all the way into Joshua before this account really develops into the end product. And we are hundreds of years later because this sleeper's starting to wake up. This sleeper, sleeping his life away, is starting to wake up. He is spiritually asleep, but he's starting to wake up. And we'll go into the rest of it because now we're going to turn a corner. But if we think about God's timing, it starts back well before this. It starts back with Laban kind of screwing over Jacob for the wife. Prayers that Rachel would have a child. Rachel has a child. That child is favored because of that. We're going to see here Rachel's second child ends up being a key pawn in the game next week. But the things that were placed in order by the Lord were amazing. If he wasn't favored, he wouldn't have been a punk. If he wasn't a punk, they wouldn't have thrown him in the pit. There wouldn't be the brothers arguing what we should do with him. If he wasn't that punk, he wouldn't have been sold to literally their family members, and he never would have made it to Egypt. If he never made it to Egypt, he never went and sold into slavery. If he wasn't sold into slavery, Potiphar wouldn't have bought him. Potiphar's wife wouldn't have wrongly accused him. Joseph wouldn't be put in prison. The keeper of the prison wouldn't have favored him. Joseph wouldn't have been given free range of the prison. Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, in the timing of it, were thrown into that prison where he could interpret the dream. None of this would have happened without God saying, okay, I'm playing these pieces on the chessboard. If all of this hadn't happened, he wouldn't have been there to interpret those dreams with God's interpretation. God's timing, we're going to say it's another about 2 years after he interprets those dreams before he actually gets to do it for Pharaoh. We'll look at that next week. But the thing I want us to think about here, when we read text, don't judge. Don't judge people because we're not in their situation. Are we in a situation where we have been favored to the point of where we become that little punk brat? Maybe, maybe not. Are we in a situation where we have a sibling that is greatly favored and becomes that? What would we do in that situation? What do we do? Now think about this. What do we do when we all get together in anger and start to each other? The water cooler talk is never positive, let's be honest. So we're standing around the water cooler out here while we're feeding the sheep and letting them graze. They got the water cooler sitting there. I'm not sure if they plugged into a current bush or what. But anyway, they're standing around the water cooler discussing that Joseph brother. Yep, there he comes. Can't miss that coat he's wearing. Have we been put in a position where they are, where we literally, Jesus said it, if you hate, you've already killed them? Thank God on that one. They hated them. They'd already killed them in their heart. And there they are on the water cooler going, we might better just do it. Because each one of them is pushing the next one. How do these peaceful protest riots start? By one person with a bad attitude stirring up another and another and another, and then it spreads. What if, as we're trying to, fruits of the Spirit here, the blessings of the Spirit here, what if we set up a water cooler in our lives, and no matter what is said, it's nothing but positive? If we're standing around the water cooler of life, and people are like, did you see who so-and-so? Stop. And say something good about someone. That person that everybody's talking about, hold up a minute. Let's say something good about that person. Can we change it? Can we stop the way we talk? Can we be the hands and feet? Can we be what we're called to be? Can we be, looking at Joseph, and we hear the story of the coat of many colors and everything when we're kids, and then we hear kind of at the end where he saved Egypt. There's not a lot in the middle. We look at that dash that's in the middle. And we look at it, we're going to be singing that song in a few minutes here, dash. We see a start and we see an end. And we think of Memorial Day as we go to memory of what's going on here. I think about Memorial Day and what it means. We look at the headstones, and what's on the headstones? The dash. That person was born and the person died. Yay! What about the dash? What does that dash mean? Are we going to be the person that makes something out of that dash? When we look forward to that headstone that is placed on our grave, What does that dash mean? When we go farther in this account, I'm hoping everybody's already read it and knows what it says and all that. I hope this is just a simple reiteration of what we already know. What is that dash going to be? When we look at the dash of the people that have lost their lives for this country, do we remember what that is? Do we literally honor them? When we look back in the Bible, do we literally honor them in that dash? Or do we just and all those crosses, right? Perfect rows, and if you've never been there, you need to. It's an amazing sight. And there's dashes all over there. Who was that person? There's a name and there's a date. Who was that person? Not that we need to live in infamy or live in fame or live in whatever. But what if? We think of the what ifs, another thing we talked about downstairs for a minute or two. The what ifs in the story of Adam and Eve. Then we look at, and this again, it's in God's timing. Dawn had no idea what I was going to be preaching on today, but she sent me that message. What if we're that pastor? Here we are, how many years later, and that story comes up. Because what else do we know about that man's life? He was a pastor. He was on the Titanic. He died. We don't know much. But that dash in heaven is huge because there's somebody else in heaven because of that little short. How long did it take to witness to him? A minute, 2 minutes, 10? I don't know. When we become the hands and feet of Christ and when we do something, just like this punk kid who is now in charge of Potiphar's whole empire. Why? Because he's starting to learn. He's starting to become spiritually more awake. Now he's in charge of the jail. Why? Because he's more spiritual awake. This is his dash. What's our dash? Individually, think about it. What is the dash that we have made on that tombstone? Again, thinking of Memorial Day, and we think about the people that have lost their lives for our freedoms. How many people biblically lost their lives for our freedoms? Jesus did. What's Jesus' dash? Jesus' dash, when we think about it, was 3 years in ministry. Just 3 years. And look what he did. He changed the universe in 3 years. Are we going to, and Lindsay and I were talking about this yesterday or the day before or whatever, are we going to be like Jesus and we're going to change everything? I don't know if we got what it takes to do that. But we do, because we've got the Holy Spirit, which is Jesus, is God. We can make a change. We can put that dash and make something out of it. So let's do that. Let's take that dash. And it's no longer just a date and a date. Something that means something in the middle there. Let's make that dash actually mean something. So when somebody goes by later on and says, oh, so-and-so, that year to that year, but I heard a story about that person. That person did whatever. Whatever it is. But let's do that for the Lord. Not for ourselves. Let's do that for the Lord. Let's make that dash into something. Let's close in prayer. We'll get into the rest of this next week. And see how far we get next week. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you.